It's an interesting scene. It apparently is one of the longest scenes in film history of a woman talking on screen.
You are being urged to protect the culture and traditions and morality of an America that no longer exists.
So it's quite a formidable scene in many ways, and it's a moment when Ruth just speaks completely truthfully, and she just stops caring what everyone thinks of her and what everyone might say or do. She just doesn't care, because actually she knows that what she's saying is the absolute truth, and she believes in what she's saying, and she just lets everything go and lets it out.
Welcome to You Know That Scene, an original series celebrating iconic scenes in Seminole cinema. The scenes are a jumping off point for discussion between our esteemed guests, a group of makers, critics, authors, and influencers who all share one thing in common: a love of film. The theme of this week's episode is a discussion about the ways that politics and political movements are portrayed in popular cinema. And a great example is Darkest Hour. And in this movie, Winston Churchill is faced with a difficult decision whether he's going to enter a peace treaty with Hitler or to stand and fight.
As everyone knows, if it's a period film with an accent, I'm there for it. There was no corsets in this, so it didn't hit my trifecta, but it was pretty close.
2 out of 3,
2 out of 3. But Gary Oldman's portrayal in this won him the Oscar for a reason.
If you didn't know it was him, you wouldn't know it was him. And you know that scene where he says, I wanted to fill my cabinet with my rivals, but perhaps I went too far.
When will the lesson be learned? When will the lesson be learned? How many more dictators must be wooed, appeased, good God, given him mixed privileges, before we learn? You cannot reason with a tiger when your head is in its mouth!
This movie shows the separation between the general public, the people who are not affiliated with politics, and the people who have this incredible moral dilemma to make all the decisions for everyone else. And you know that scene when Churchill rides the tube.
If the worst came to pass and the enemy were to appear on those streets above, what would you do?
Fight.
Fight the fascists.
Fight them with anything we can lay our hands on.
Broom handles if we must.
It's the heart of the film where he's talking to the people. This one person could basically ask Great Britain, trust me, we are not going to surrender to the Nazis.
I think the film described the human aspect of it. This is not just a bombing on a map. This is just not a red pin on a board. It's that human connection that really sort of, I think, drives home everything else that happens later.
When you talk about politics, the movie Milk comes to mind. Harvey Milk was the first openly gay elected official in the history of California, and he's really changed what it means to be an advocate for not just civil rights, but human rights as well.
We see that case brilliantly highlighted in this film, where he first encounters his new neighbors in the Castro.
If you open those doors, the Merchants Association of the police pull your license.
Under what law?
Excuse me?
There's man's law and there's God's law in this neighborhood. And in this city.
You know, we pay taxes.
The San Francisco Police Force is happy to enforce either. Have a good day.
In that moment, Harvey needs to make a change.
He was the first one to say, not only can we live here, we should help shape the laws here and make sure that our voices are heard.
We could have a revolution here. But you can't use the Castro just to cruise. You have to fight.
It's a powerful scene because it has this nuance of the older generation talking to the younger generation, being like, I lived it, it's gonna be okay, but let's make it better.
You know that scene when he's about to go up on the stage to make a speech at the Gay Pride rally. And right before he goes on, he gets a death threat.
You get the first bullet the minute you stand at the microphone.
Introducing Supervisor Harvey Milk.
Well, publicity's working.
He doesn't skip a beat. He's like, I'm going anyway.
Well, you understand in that scene that he has accepted the cost of what he's decided to do.
He says, I have to risk literally everything for what I believe in.
Harvey Milk put up such a great fight for the gay community, and now I want to talk about another couple who put up a great fight. We are talking about Richard and Mildred Loving in the movie Loving, directed by Jeff Nichols. They had to fight year-long battles for the right to be married in their home state of Virginia.
In here?
What you doing in that bed, boy?
Richard!
What you doing in bed with that woman?
I'm his wife.
That's no good here.
The urgency of that scene, the way the cop breaks in, you'd swear that they were holding someone hostage or that they robbed a bank, and they were just married.
What was so interesting to me is that the positioning of the marriage certificate, it's right there. This was no accident, and it's so sad that you had to live like that in that time.
That's so true, because I honestly can't even tell you right now exactly where my marriage license is. Like, I know I have it, but it's somewhere under some boxes.
You might look for it after the show.
What really kind of drives this all home when they get wrapped up in this court battle and Nick Kroll asks Richard Loving, what do you want the court to know?
Is there anything you'd like me to say to them? And by them, I mean the Supreme Court Justices of the United States?
Tell the judge I love my wife.
This film shows so well that you have to change their hearts in order to change their minds. And if you are going to enact political change, you start with the human element.
The Lovings fought so hard for what they believed in, and another person who fought for something she really believed in is Ruth Bader Ginsburg. In the movie On the Basis of Sex, she takes sex-based discrimination cases all the way to the U.S. Court of Appeals. You know that scene where the dean invites these 8 women to dinner that's supposed to honor them.
Let us go around the table, and each of you ladies report who you are, where you're from, and why you're occupying a place that could have gone to a man.
Now, they've already been accepted, so why again are they being asked to stand and reconfirm their position there?
And the thing about Felicity Jones is that as Ruth, she's reserved, subtle. It's what she says.
I'm Ruth Ginsburg from Brooklyn.
And why are you here, Miss Ginsburg?
Mrs. Ginsburg, actually. My husband Marty is in the second-year class. I'm here to learn more about his work, so I can be a more patient and understanding wife.
Ruth Bader Ginsburg, the person, she's managed to, in every walk of her life, stand up to men in authority and tell them, you're wrong for underestimating me, you're wrong for placing me into a box.
You are being urged to protect the culture and traditions and morality of an America that no longer exists. A generation ago, my students would have been arrested for indecency, for wearing the clothes that they do. 65 years ago, it would have been unimaginable that my daughter would aspire to a career. And 100 years ago, I would not have the right to stand before you.
The part that hit home for me was when she says the change has already happened. The law just needs to catch up.
It takes one person to make a stand and to fight for it.
And that's another theme through all of these. No matter how big the story, no matter whether it's something that affects the world like Churchill or something as intimate as 2 people trying to find the legitimacy of their marriage, it's all about the personal connection. That aspect of storytelling is why audiences flocked to these films. It just goes to show you again, we all crave real human stories.
Absolutely.
I want to thank my co-hosts for joining me today to discuss political themes in films. These films capture the courageous stories of people who refuse to accept the status quo. We've got more episodes on more topics in the coming weeks that we're excited to share with you, so please like our Facebook page and we'll see you next time on You Know That Scene.